It seems like everybody loves the Power Rangers, and I have got to say, one list is definitely not sufficient enough to talk about all the awesome, powerful Rangers in this universe.
I would completely agree, which is why today on Top 10 Nerd we are circling back for part 2 of the most powerful Rangers in comics. I am Amanda McKnight.
And I'm Adam Andrews, and before we jump in, a question. Who is your absolute favorite Ranger to appear in the show? My favorites were back in part 1, which you should watch, but another close runner-up for me will be coming up in the 6th spot today. Your favorite is on this list, I think, right?
Yes it is, but you'll have to stick around to find out who that is. Number 10, Bulk and Skull, Purple and Orange Rangers. That's right! Bulk and Skull actually end up becoming Power Rangers as well in the comics. In the show and in the comics they are both known as being rivals of the other kids at the school, mistreating and picking on the Power Rangers when they are in their civilian forms. Not so nice. But also Bulk and Skull are actually massive fans of the Power Rangers, kinda like the relationship Flash Thompson had with Peter Parker and his superhero identity of Spider-Man earlier on in the comics. And just like Flash, they also become heroes. Well, at least for a time. And over time they definitely become allies to the Power Rangers, so you know, they become better people as time goes on. Yay! They both helped Zordon with a mission when the Power Rangers were trapped. He made them temporary Rangers by giving them each extremely rare power coins. However, Alpha removes their memories of this incident afterwards, so they themselves do not remember their time on this mission as the Purple and Orange Rangers. Pretty sad considering how much they love the Power Rangers. Alright friends, before we move on to the next spot, it's time to do that cool thing that you do on YouTube and click that like button.
Click it!
So that we know you want more Power Rangers.
Click it!
Yeah.
Click the like button.
Do it.
Number 9. Nick Russell, the Red Mystic Force Ranger. The light that would save the world from darkness, aka the most powerful wizard of all time. His magical abilities kind of automatically put him near the top of the list in terms of powerful Rangers, but then he had this really cool, not battleizer, but it technically acted as one. I'm a little fuzzy on how exactly that works, but he has his red Dragonfire Ranger form, which is when he straight up merges with the dragon Fireheart. That sentence I just said sounds so cool, but if you saw him use this form in the show, then you know how cool it looks. Wielding the power of fire itself, being the leader of the Mystic Force Rangers and the son of Leanbow, Nick Russell is super cool and very powerful. Unfortunately, in the comics he doesn't get many chances to really display his power. He and the other Mystic Force Rangers were split off into their own pocket universe, then later he receives Zordon's call through the Morphin Grid and is all the way in the back of a panel of a bunch of other powerful Rangers who rally to Zordon's pocket dimension led by Eric Myers, the Quantum Ranger, for a last stand against Lord Drakon. Then him and the other Mystic Rangers pilot the Titan Megazord during the battle on the moon of the world of the Coinless against Drakon and his Ranger sentries. In at number 8 as well is Trent Mercer, the White Ranger. Trent here is another Ranger who started off his time as a villain, which means he has to have enough power to make him a threat. That's why pretty much all of the anti-hero, once a villain Rangers are kind of OP. Trent specifically has a bunch of abilities that are almost rude. He had the ability of super speed and camouflage, which were the abilities of the Red Ranger and Black Ranger, and he arguably used them way better than those Rangers did. But on top of that, he wielded not one, but 2 Zords, the Dragozord and the Stegozord. Most people can't say that for themselves. Also, having 2 Zords, he even had the capability to combine the 2 of these really powerful Zords into a Megazord that he could pilot all by his lonesome. The Rangers were extremely lucky they were able to sway him over to their side as the White Dino Thunder Ranger, because with his advantages he may have caused the end for them. Also, I just gotta say his design and his Super Dino Mode design are just so cool, and unlike a lot of other designs from the show, his aren't totally ridiculous. Unfortunately for his comic book story, he doesn't play a major role in any story. He and the other Dino Rangers get whisked off into their own pocket universe and at the end of the arc are restored back to their timeline, but we have to at least mention this awesome 6th Ranger.
Number 7. Kimberly Hart, the Pink Ranger. Kimberly Ann Hart, or just Kimberly Hart in some iterations, is one of the first main Rangers to appear, and the same is true of her in the comics. Kimberly was the first Pink Ranger, and while we talked about an alternate version of Kimberly known as Ranger Slayer from the World of the Coinless reality from the comics, we did not talk about her main reality counterpart, who who, like her alternate, is also super powerful and committed to fighting against the forces of evil and helping to protect innocent people and of course her friends. In the main continuity, Kimberly is not coinless, instead getting her power from the pterodactyl powered coin given to her by Zordon. To match it, she can also call on the pterodactyl Dinozord. She typically is best known for fighting with her power bow, but also possesses her blade blaster as well. Kimberly was also one of my favorite rangers growing up from the 90s series. I even used to have a little plush doll version of her that I would actually take everywhere with me, and now I'm wondering if she's also the reason that I generally like playing as like a ranger, like the class in games, and that I always prefer to use a bow, which is a thing.
Number 6. Magna Defender. I don't care if you don't count him as a ranger, the Magna Defender is one of the best characters from Lost Galaxy. He has the best aesthetic in terms of rangers, and he has the coolest backstory, making him an awesome anti-hero in the Power Rangers canon. The Magna Defender fought in a battle that occurred over 3,000 years ago. The Magna Defender's homeworld was attacked and overrun by Scorpius and his monsters, with his son Zyka used as a shield to stop the Defender from attacking Scorpius's army. His son then perished shortly afterward when he tried to attack Scorpius and save his father. So, of course, the Magna Defender swore revenge for both his son and their planet. Magna Defender is ruthless and will fight through the Rangers and civilians if it means he gets the revenge that he desires. Now, he doesn't have a morpher or a transformation. Instead, he possessed the body of Mike Corbett, the Red Ranger's brother, and used him to try and get the revenge that he wanted. But he left Mike's body and also left Mike with the power of the Magna Defender. Without a morpher or any transformation to rely on, he has to be very powerful. He has this awesome sword that obviously turns into a blaster as well, and he also wields the Torozord. Both of these are pretty darn powerful. He was also in that last battle against Drakon, and he essentially served as the 6th Ranger for the Lost Galaxy Rangers, so I'm calling him a Ranger. Damn it, you can't stop me.
Number 5. Billy Cranston, the Blue Ranger. Billy is often thought of as the brains of the core Power Rangers team, and he is also part of the original team of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, both in the show and in the comics. However, in the comics, a cool thing is that he's not really alone when it comes to this. In fact, while Billy is one of the most ingenious of the group, other Rangers also help him with his more intellectual projects and pursuits. Namely, I've seen Trini, the Yellow Ranger, help him multiple times, and although they were also close in the show, I feel like they're like even closer in the comics. Billy was chosen to become the Blue Ranger thanks to his patience and his smarts. Among his friends, both of these traits are celebrated. Billy was given the Triceratops power coin by Zordon, and to go with it, also pilots the Triceratops Dinozord. As time goes on, Billy becomes more confident and sure of himself, although initially he struggles to do so as his smarts often seem to create barriers when it comes to communication and socializing between him and others. Why I really love Billy though. He like grows so much throughout his time as a Power Ranger.
And at number 4 is Orion, the Super Megaforce Silver Ranger. Okay, some people may be a little annoyed by Orion's inclusion here, some might not. And it all comes down to an incredibly divisive power that this guy possesses. As most of you might know, the 6th Ranger in Power Rangers media is almost always the most powerful one. They can usually take on threats on their own that the team can't even handle together. Orion, who became the Super Megaforce Silver Ranger after the 6th Ranger key landed on his planet, had access to the Super Megaforce Gold form, which gave him the abilities of all 15 6th Rangers. Using a fused together Ranger key, Orion was able to access the power of 6, amping him up to incredibly ridiculous levels of powerful and giving him a super thick armor that has little images of all 15 Rangers' helmets on the front. It does look a little silly, I totally will admit that, and the power of 6 seemed a little silly to a lot of people as well, but given the lore with the grid and all that, it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility. Either way, it doesn't matter too much, as in the comics he didn't actually do much fighting, it was more just cool to just see him there. But at one point in time he had the ability to be more powerful than almost all other Rangers, and that makes him super cool.
Number 3. Andros, Red Solar Ranger. Andros is the Red Space Ranger or Red Solar Ranger. In the show, he has not just skills as a fighter, but also has actual superpowers, telekinetic ones that are typical of those who also live out on KO-35, a human colony located in outer space. Andros was also basically like the Silver Surfer with a drill sword. He could use his galaxy glider to fly through space, and has a spiral saber, which is a sword that's also like a drill, and which could be combined with his laser gun known as his Astro Blaster to make a souped up up Spiral Saber, which is pretty cool. Like many others in the comics, Andros' story is basically a continuation of the version we know from the show Power Rangers in Space. At one point, Andros fights to protect his sister after Astronema is defeated, and she becomes free of her evil influence. We later learn that Charon and Astronema, while once the same person, have been split in twain, with Astronema becoming her own entity, freeing Charon from the guilt of Astronema's cruel and evil crimes. However, this turns out to be a genius plot of Andros's to both free his sister and give the people who Astronema hurt what they wanted most: revenge. He created a hard light hologram of Astronema in order to make the people of the court think that she was a separate entity, which they then got to defeat, and that also freed Charon from punishment, although she was not as happy about that. She was like, hey, let me go to jail or be killed.
And in at number 2, the Quantum Ranger Eric Myers. Before becoming a Ranger, Eric Myers was actually a soldier working for the for-profit militant group called the Silver Guardians. He was rather resentful and pretty selfish at the beginning, and he even gained the powers of the Quantum Morpher by force to further his career as a soldier. He came on as the Time Force Ranger's 6th Ranger, which, as we know, makes him powerful automatically. And while he affiliated with the Time Force Rangers, he ultimately stood a bit more alone with one of the best arsenals and Zords in the franchise, the Quantosaurus Rex Zord. The Q-Rex doesn't have a cockpit for a Ranger, but it's controlled through voice command on the Quantum Morpher. The Q-Rex was awesome, and he used quantum energy to put him ahead of most other Rangers, but in the comics, he really got some time to shine, leading the group of assembled and reunited Rangers to appear outside of the command center for that famous last fight against Lord Drakon. Seeing him standing there in front of this big group of wildly powerful Rangers, it's great. He may be a bit of a jerk with a soft, warm underbelly, but I think it's because he's awesome and powerful enough to back it up.
Number 1. The Morphinaut, also known as the Phantom Ranger. This Ranger was a mysterious figure whose identity was unrevealed. They appeared in both the Power Rangers in Space and Power Rangers Turbo shows. The Phantom Ranger hailed from the same homeworld as Zordon, known as Eltar. In the comics, we learned that before he was known as the Phantom Ranger, this Ranger had a different alias, the Morphinaut. As the Morphinaut over 10,000 years ago in the past, he was trapped inside the Morphin Grid as a preventative measure to protect others from the evil that lurked around its perimeters. Hundreds of years in the past, the Morphinaut ended up being freed from the Morphin Grid and would go on to help the Squadron Rangers in their fight against the Dark Spectre. Eventually, the Morphinaut became corrupted by Dark Spectre, which he chose to do in order to protect the Squadron Rangers. His armor turned black, and although the Squadron Rangers would later defeat Dark Spectre, freeing the Morphinaut from their influence, the Morphinaut's armor would remain black, and they would take on the name of Phantom Ranger in their new form. And that's all the time we have for today. There are so many great Rangers out there and so many great comics about them, to be honest.
Plus, TMNT, the Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Power Rangers are teaming up again in the IDW and Boom Studios crossover later this month. That's awesome! That's so cool!
I'm excited. We'll see you in the next video, but until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.
Bye-bye.